you vegetable gardeners out there, you might want to start checking your sweet potatoes. Now, our purple sweet potatoes here aren't ready yet, but keep in mind that they're a tropical plant, and once they start setting the potatoes down under the ground, those are going to grow and grow and just get larger and larger until they may get beyond the size that you want that's practical for cooking. They're not going to stop growing until they die down after a frost. So now that it's closing in on mid-September, start checking yours, and when they get to about 2 inches by 5 inches, that's a good size to harvest. Well, last week we started our fall vegetable garden. We planted from seed some squash and cucumbers and beans, and the beans are coming up really well. We're pretty sure we're going to get a nice harvest before a frost, so long as we don't get some odd early freeze. And back behind me, we have some that have been bearing all summer, and they're starting to slow down now. A lot of that is because of the heat. And if you happen to have some beans that have made it through the summer, you might find that the pods are rather hollow. A lot of that has to do with them not setting very well in the heat, and of course that's the reason we want a fall garden, to get some more fresh beans. Well, last week we went to extreme measures to plant some cole crops, and they've pulled through beautifully. Just want to remind you, if you missed the show last week, that our method and our intent is to get them in the ground, keep them cool and moist and shaded, and screen out insects. So we've put up some plastic hoops that have rebar down underneath them to hold them in against the wind. On top of that, we stretched shade cloth to shield the sun, and then on top of that we put Remay with the intent of screening out insects, and it seems to be working really well. Now, if you've not gone to these measures, keep in mind again the insects are out there and they're hungry, especially cabbage loopers. Some gardeners in the Stillwater area have found those on their plants already. You can hand pick them off if it's just a few plants. You need to do that every day though. Check on the back side to look for them. And if you have a large planting, you might try using Bacillus thuringiensis. Comes under many trade names, as you know. The form we're using is Dipel 4L. Right now, we've got some basil that's ready for harvest, so join me over in the herb garden. You know, over in the vegetable garden we talked about planting a fall garden, but right now there's something you can be harvesting and putting up for the winter, and that's basil. Now, this is some nice culinary basil that I've harvested. We also have licorice basil, which is culinary but more of a licorice flavor, but I'm going to leave it alone today. We've got an orb weaver spider who's just spun a nice web, and they're beneficial in the garden. We want it to do its job of chasing down insects. Now, with basil, it's in the mint family, it grows fast, and we've probably been reminding you most of the summer to keep it pinched back, just like coleus or anything else that's in the mint family. It's going to develop some flower heads that aren't going to do you any good in the culinary sense, so you want to keep those pinched off. Now, this basil that I've just harvested has had no pesticides on it, but still there might be a little bit of dust, and it's a good idea to swish it out in water before you get started. And that'll just get any surface dust off. Shake it off really well, and then daub it dry with some paper towels. Now, if you've got one of those salad spinner gadgets, that'll really save you time on this step right here. But just get the surface of it rinsed off. Now, basil bruises really easily, so you want to handle it fairly gently. The next step is to pick off individual leaves. And once you've done that, you end up with a pile of leaves that you're probably thinking, okay, what's next? What do I do next? Well, you have these fresh basil leaves, and you can lay those out on an old screen wire or put them in a food dehydrator and dry them down for fresh basil, then crunch them up and put them in a glass jar, and that works just fine. But there are some cooks who really want that fresh flavor. The only way to get that is either to grow it fresh on your windowsill or to freeze it. Now, you end up with a pile of leaves like this. You might say, well, if I freeze them, and once they defrost, they're going to be just a mass of dark green glop, and I won't be able to do anything with them. Well, I ran across about a week ago in Fine Cooking magazine 2 ways to put basil up that'll be frozen, so it'll retain its fresh flavor, but also it'll be packeted and ready for recipes. Now, all I've done is taken a sheet of cardboard that comes off, say, the back of a legal pad that you've run out of paper, and then wrapped up the basil, about 2 to 3 tablespoons worth, enough for a recipe, wrapped it up very tight in plastic, and then just stapled the corner of it to the piece of plastic. Have several of those that I can add onto there, and then put that in the freezer, and I'll just take out a packet whenever I need it, and I don't have to worry about rummaging around. Now another method for keeping just a few separate leaves all in one place and peeling them off as you need it is to do a wax paper jelly roll. And again, these have been leaves that have been washed and dried and laid on here, and we've just rolled them up, and you just open that up and peel them off as you need them, then wrap it back up again. And this needs to be slipped into a Ziploc bag or some other kind of plastic bag to hold it and hold in the moisture in the freezer so you don't get freezer burn. Well, I hope you'll try some of these methods. I think they'll work really well for retaining that fresh basil taste.